the 2023.1 or Antelope cycle. I still get confused like what to say, like which name to prefer. I'm not sure if the people who have joined late, they can see the Etherpads. I've pasted it again in the chat, and it's also on the sender channel. And again, just anyone joining right now, they can add their names on the attendees list in the Etherpad. Yeah, I think with that we can get started with the topics. So first two topics are added by me. It's just a checkpoint for the cycle. So I will just quickly go through it. So we have the spec status in which we have this encrypted backup spec. So I think Christian requested this and Gorka was working on it, and I still have to review it. I know I promised it, but I didn't get much time to do it. So apart from that, like I think there was a comment by Christian regarding using Keystone Fernet tokens. I'm not sure if Gurka is aware about it or he saw the comment on the spec. So Christian, would you like to discuss that?
Yeah, but you pretty much summed it up. It's all about reviewing that and maybe discussing my remark about allowing a rotation of the key and how the usage of Fernet keys or the Fernet library will actually work in this case. Yeah, I added a few things, but as you said, it's more about reviewing it and working inside the spec than, I believe, discussing the whole idea in general. I guess, Koka, you correct me, we're past that point, that it makes sense to not trust the third party that stores the data. That's why we encrypt it. It's just about how do we implement it properly or most suitably.
Yeah, I saw Gurka nodding, but so I will take it as yes.
Yes, it's just that BlueJeans takes a long time today to do things. So yeah,
Is it my internet or Gurka is froze?
No, it's him.
Okay.
Yeah, he froze.
Yeah, in the meantime, I bluntly dumped my last comment in case you care about the details, but as I said, it's more about working on it than discussing here, likely.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. So then, yeah, Gurka just pinged up. Yeah, he will probably join with Firefox, but we can move on from this one. Just encourage everyone to review this spec. Okay, the next one we have is the assisted volume extent API, and this has a spec ongoing on the Nova side, and with the same idea, they have this this changes that needs to be done on the sender side. They have a spec for it, and yeah, I left few comments and that looks good. I think the last comment by Conrad was regarding, yeah, I'm not sure if he's around. Yeah, I don't see him around in the attendees, sorry, in the BlueJeans. So yeah, he left a last comment regarding, so currently we are implementing a synchronous API to ask Nova to extend the, so this is basically for the file system type drivers, specifically for the NFS one. So right now we don't support the extend in use operation on volumes, and we would like to add that, but there were multiple ways suggested to do that. I think NetApp people tried to do it in one way, Yeah, I need to remember. But his way was like implementing some changes on the Nova side, and Cinder would ask Nova to do the extend uh, dynamically, like sorry, in the online state synchronously. So he left a comment like he would like to propose another spec for this this implementation where we ask Nova to do something and Nova then responds, like completes the operation and calls another API. Like in case of when we are migrating attached volume, then we ask Nova to swap the volumes, and then Nova calls Cinder API again to complete the migration. I'm not sure what was the idea behind it, because we are trying to solve the same problem with, but yeah, I mean, anyone can, like, people can take a look and, uh, because I didn't get his last comment, but this is also looking into like in a good state, and again would ask for reviews on this. Yeah, anything else on this? Like, if anyone has taken a look or uh, would like to discuss anything regarding this spec. Okay, I don't think there is anything more. The last spec we have is the spec to introduce a new additional task field. This came up as a use case when we had a volume that was attached, and we wanted to back up that volume. Maybe it was in attached. I mean, it was in some state where we could. Yeah, I need to refresh.
It was about backing up. That was me, or actually Nicholas, working student from my team, proposing that exact change. That was the result of lots of discussion, how to decouple that, and then we came to the point saying maybe move all of them to a dedicated field. But through the discussion of that particular spec that grew out of that, we came to the point that it's actually only backups that are causing issues. Otherwise, other things should be more or less synchronized or kept apart. So the reason I bring it up, actually, my comments are a few lines below in the Etherpad, moving backup status out of volume status field. That's the actual question: is would it make sense to propose a new spec that only does that, gets backups out of the volume state, because there's no backup driver that actually touches the volume in a way that makes sense to change the volume state.
Well, I think there are, when you're not thinking about when we're talking about available volumes, then it's completely different. So if it's completely decoupled from the normal flow, then you could start doing things in that same volume that you're backing up, right?
Yeah, most
importantly, that could be problematic.
To us would be live migrating the machine that we can't.
Yeah, you could be. So if the use case you're talking about is the volume is attached, I want to be able to create a backup, right? If I remember correctly, that was the case. So
that works. You just have to force it. If it's attached, you just have to force it. That works now out of the box. And it creates a snapshot. Yes. And it will just happily back it up while the machine is running volume. Yep. Question is, I cannot live migrate the machine anymore, because when you start a backup, the volume status changes to backing up, and that for a longer period of time. And then you cannot change the volume state over that running process again to say migrating or reattach. That's not working. because the backup state. If you go a few lines below, there's my comments. There are links to the discussions. There's even a recent bug that somebody brought up where the actual volume state had to be restored and it wasn't after the backup is done. So to me it's an overuse of that volume status, because that the backup is happening or is ran successfully or whatever is not part of the volume status, it's part of the backup, whatever state machine, but it's stored or handled in the volume status. And that was the reason we brought up the initial idea to like totally free any of the tasks that run on the volume, like a resize or whatever, to a dedicated field. But we came to the conclusion that this is really complicated, that there are lots of edge cases, and that's why I bring up this discussion again to say, well, wouldn't it be sensible, since that's the use case we know, to just externalize the backup process from touching the volume state or being handled in the volume state?
Yeah, I think what could happen is if we move it, I'm not saying no, I'm just thinking that there could be also cases here to consider. So for example, if the backup is out of the volume, you have created a snapshot for that volume. Now, since the backup it's no longer tied to the status of the volume, you delete the volume. But you have a snapshot, temporary snapshot, yet you're trying to delete the volume, and it will probably fail. So we would have to somehow give meaningful responses to users as well, saying, hey, no, you cannot delete, a backup is in progress. As in, if you want to delete it, abort the backup and then come back. So I'm not saying no to moving, I'm just saying that we have to consider the different scenarios that we have, because now you can also start a second backup concurrently. And there are some operations that you will be able to do.
Deleting, yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. You have to check a different field. So the volume has to be in the right state to be deleted, and there must not be a backup currently running on that volume for it to be deleted. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's as I said, it's the same information. It's just stored somewhere else, so it has a decoupled state machine. That's what I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think, but I think it should be fine. The problem is backward compatibility. If there are scripts that currently look for the backup status to check when it has completed, that would be problematic. Because if I have a script that says do a backup and checks the volume status, then the script will no longer work. That could be simply done with a micro version.
Yeah, that's what we discussed last time. It has to be an anti-corruption layer, somewhat converting the different micro versions to each other, mapping the formally returned things. Yeah, if you lower down in the micro version, so it has to be in that sense a preference. Like if the volume has a current backup, that has a higher priority of the volume state to return to the lower version API. I mean, if we can't engineer around that, we can't change it at all. I'm totally agreeing that we tried too hard to like totally design a new thing last time, maybe getting all the tasks out and all the things decoupled. Maybe it was too much. I'm just saying this is one use case, and you have those independent backup technologies, as you said, running on snapshots. It's just so sad that you make a strong dependency in that sense, or you really strongly couple the processes in that sense.
Yes, I agree. I'm trying now to see the different operations of the backup and restore. Well, the restore is not a problem. The backup, if I remember correctly, there was a way to cancel a backup. I'm just trying to remember what was the way to change it. Okay. Okay, yeah, no problem. That will not be a problem because we are checking the status of the backup, not the volume, to cancel a backup. So that is fine. I was wondering if that could be problematic, but no, because the way the backup drivers do to detect when a user wants to cancel a backup is to check the backup status. So that should be fine. Like you were saying, it's the backup where we see the status of the operation. So that should be fine. I think I
The
don't
only
have
reason you
any,
have the status on the volume currently is to be able to check the volume to see if that is currently being backed up. You could do it the other way
Yep.
around. Search for a backup that touches that particular volume, would get the same information in that sense. But as you said, you can't break the established APIs. Certainly you can't. So yeah, that's why we have to present it as part of the volume that this is currently being backed up or not.
Yeah, I think probably it would be a good idea to just focus, like you're saying, on the backup use case, which is the one that worries you. And backups are slow, so it would, yeah. Because solving the
That's the exact conclusion that we came to. Resize, all of the other things, there are pretty much instantaneously. The problem is our long backups of multi-terabyte volumes will block our operational tasks, and that's just sad. Because it's technically not necessary, it's just a data model issue.
Yep. I think it makes sense to limit it. We may have, if I remember correctly, that was the original proposal that was made to the Cinder team, just the backups. But we said, oh no, we should do everything. Then we went to do everything, and it's like, oh, this is a monster. There's no way to do it right. So yeah, maybe it's a good idea
exactly
to take
how
a
it
step
works.
back.
You start off small on the whiteboard. Everybody draws more boxes, and then you end up in a monster. And yeah, we ourselves believed in the idea of making it all go away, but it's just too much. So that's why
Yes.
we came back to the drawing board, and that's why I'm asking: does it make sense? Would you personally, or you all agree that externalizing just the backup would be beneficial enough to introduce a new field, change the data model, make a new API version, add the anti-corruption thing, whatever, to convert the different presentation to the user? Or yeah, that's kind of the question. To not start a spec again and end up discussing it with that.
Would we need a new additional field for this, really? If we're talking about just backups?
But to store the field, the issue is volume status is the thing. We have too many status on that one single field.
Is there any problem like running multiple concurrent backups of the same volume?
But that
You
would
wouldn't
be...
allow a new backup to be started. In any case, either the volume status is already in backing up, or in the new sense, if there was a field indicating that backup was going on, you would check that field if that field has backing up, currently backing up. But you only allow one concurrent backup on.
Probably we can have a field like attach status or migration status that we have on the volume.
But one thing, we may not need an additional field, because if you try to delete a volume that it's in use, because what we are changing is the in use. So the use case that we're looking at is the volume is in use, I want to live migrate it. Sorry, but one thing, if we are doing a live migration, of the instance, right? Not the volume itself. Okay, then that should be fine. And for anything else, the suggestion that is to check that other field. So add code wherever we allow operations to check if there is a backup in progress. Right?
Okay, say the last bit
Or I
again.
misunderstood. So the idea of adding a field is to, in this case, would be just to store if there is an additional operation going on and say there is a backup, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, or in the new proposal, a field that just indicates backups. That name it however you like, but the as you said, the kind of idea we had that didn't make it was to call it additional whatever or test status and hold all sorts of tests that could run. But now we're only talking about the use case backup, so why not name it backup status? Yeah. And that is it has a completely independent state machine. It could either be null or empty, backing up or restoring or whatever. That only contains the state machine status that belongs to the backup, or cinder backup is the only thing touching that field and doesn't care. It only checks whether the volume is in the correct status to start a backup, but then that field is owned by cinder backup to indicate there's a currently backup running or not. That's the kind of the idea. And then everything else remains the same, like resizing, attaching, reservation, or whatever the state machine all holds. We had a few graphics even of the proposed state machines in the past proposal, but as I said, it's gotten too complicated.
I'm thinking whether we could use the workers table to reflect when there is a backup going on, so that way we don't need a backup specific field to be added. So right now we have a workers table, which is where we store the operations that are ongoing that can be cleaned up automatically by the services. That we have some operation to clean them up after a service goes down or something like that. So if we store there, there is a backup going on for this volume, maybe we could do it, but I'm not sure if that would work.
Yeah, or you could use the backups table, see if that for that volume is a backup. Yeah, then you don't store it with the volume. Yeah. Question is if that's too much detail. I'm first of all, I only wanted to waste your time asking if the use case is valid, and if you go again down that path of trying to make that work, and then look at the technical details of how to make it fly.
Well, we could, I think your idea of using the backup could be, but I'm not sure if the overhead of looking for the backup by volume would make sense.
I mean, the API has a call that you can list the backups by volume. That's already there.
Yeah,
But then
but right
filter
now
down by status.
we don't have an index for that. So that could check all the existing backups. But It's probably okay to just, I would like to hear everybody else's opinion, but I think it should be fine to just add in a field reflecting that there is a backup going on.
So
Did you say
as
something, Rajat? Okay.
I was just saying, like, as far as I have reviewed the spec, like, my idea was also to just focus on the backup use case because the current spec that has been modified is too complicated to think about all the cases. And I think the backup state would make it more simple and straightforward. Like, we don't have to consider a lot of cases, like just a field uh, like dedicated to the backup. So that would be a straightforward implementation for me. So I would agree to that idea.
And would we have a field that says a Boolean saying there's a backup in progress? Would we store something different?
I was thinking of using the same states we use in the volume right now, like backing up or restoring in that, like it's showing available, then backing up and restoring.
But for restoring, I think we do need to set it in the volume status because that volume cannot be used for anything else when you restore
If you're
it.
actively restoring to the same volume, you mean? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm writing that down. That's something. If you restore the backup to the same volume ID, usually it's recommended to create a new volume out of the backup.
But
I know
in any case,
I know
you
you have
want
restore
to.
to snapshot, but do you have restore from backup to the exact same volume?
Yes.
Create a new volume.
Yes.
Always, will.
Yep. You can restore to a new volume or to the same volume. And in both cases, you want the volume of the status of the volume to reflect that you cannot use that volume. Because when you're restoring, you cannot attach it, you cannot do anything. It doesn't have all the data yet, so it's useless. As soon as you start restoring, yeah.
But as Rajat said, if you have the same status, the same entries in the anon that you have, and you just split it into two fields, you just have to make sure in code that you actually run the same conditions, right? So you're only allowed to start a backup if there's no current backup or a restore going on. You just check a different field for that now, but you're totally right. You have to do that. And for the restore, you have to check there's no current backup, and if it's restoring the volume, question is, if you restore into a new volume, do you actually change the state to restoring? Because you're not restoring that particular volume anymore. You're doing a restore, but not to that volume. You rather change restoring the restoring state in the new volume that you create.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. We set the restoring in the volume that is getting the new data. And that's what I mean. That let me put it this way. If we split all the backup to a new state, everything, if we do restore and backing up and everything, we need to change a lot of code all around the place. Why? Because we have checks to delete, to do some things that check the status directly. There are many things. Attach, for example. They check the status. So if we now split it for everything, not only for when the volume is in use, then we have to change a lot of places, the code, because we have to check both fields. If we only separate the backing up when the volume is in use, no, we still have a lot of places to change. Never mind.
But the main purpose of this idea is to check less often or at less conditions, right? So you allow a volume to be in backing up, either if it's available in use or attaching or reservation. You don't care about those changes anymore in regards to the backup because that's
yeah. But thing. but let's say now you separate it. You have a volume in use, you separate the field, you have backing up now, it's backing up. Now I detach the volume, and now I do a migration of the volume. The migration, it's going to, in many cases, should fail because it has an attachment. Migration, I mean volume migration, not instant. Now I may want to delete the volume. Okay, delete we have to check. Then we also have to check in retype. We also have to check in migrate. What else? In backup, in restore. What other? Extend should be fine. What else? Okay, we just need, okay, it's fine to add a new field and check right there the status. We just have to go all over the code to the places where we check the status to check also the other one.
I got a question about this new field. So if we add a field that says a backup is in progress, does this mean that we are only going to allow one simultaneous backup for a volume? You can't back it up to two different places at the same time, that kind of thing?
Yes, same as we do today. Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was a limitation now or not.
Yes, it is a limitation, and I think it makes sense to keep it that way.
Okay.
Or does anybody think that we should be able to do multiple backups?
Well, I just think if you're going to add a new field, making it a field that says true or false and having that limitation because of how the field is shaped is something we could avoid in case we wanted to do it differently later.
Mm-hmm.
The last suggestion was to keep the status indicators or the names just like we have, so multi-value field. And then the question is, do you loosen the restriction that when a new backup is to be started, whether a backup is already running? If you don't care about that, you could allow multiple backups. Even if you have that dedicated field where it says backing up, if you have a driver or you have a config flag or in general you allow multiple backups to be running, then you just don't check that anymore, whether that volume is already being backed up, right?
Yes, you don't check it, but then you have to check it when you remove that status, because you have to check that nobody else is doing that same thing. So you don't set it to, oh, nobody's backing up when there is a second one, and then you have to be careful with race conditions. But yeah, I think Eric answered my question that I previously mentioned about using just a Boolean field. And Christian and Rajat were saying, no, we were thinking about using the status. So Eric said the downside of using the Boolean is that in the future, it is so restrictive that we could not improve the backups to allow concurrent backups of the same volume. So that's a good reason to do what you were proposing, of just storing the state like we are doing today, but in a different field. I think I made things more complicated, but in summary, I am okay with the proposal of using a different field to store the status of the backup, as we do today.
So
Right.
I just wanted to ask, maybe we can discuss this later as well, but we have this restriction of creating only one backup at a time. And we always create a temporary snapshot and a volume and then attach it to it, and we never touch the original volume for these the backup operation. So I was just curious why that is a limitation, because every time we are doing a backup we are doing it from a temporary volume instead of the original one, so we don't have to limit it.
Well, the limitation for one is because it doesn't make much sense to create multiple backups when you're still, backups in general are not something you do every 5 minutes or every hour. It's something you do at least usually every day or whatever. And also because backups are slow in OpenStack. You don't want to make it easy for people to do multiple backups.
Are we working on
If they,
speeding it up, Gorka?
yeah, but still, they are slow. So if they are fast, okay, the volume will return to the status quickly. So you can trigger a new one. But with the current status, even if we have reduced the amount of memory it uses, even if everything is trying to improve it, right now, I could go with preserving the current behavior. And in the future, thanks to using a status field for the backup and not a Boolean, we would be able to support concurrent if we want. So my opinion is to keep the restriction.
Like that makes a lot of sense, and I'm also in favor of that, like not change the design too much until there is a requirement for it specifically.
Okay.
So I think in summary, we are in agreement that a new state which could store a string type, like the state of the, like we use the state field of the volume with backing up, or that gives us more options in the future to expand upon it. So we will go with that.
So I'm now looking at Gorka, what's the best approach? Should we write up a new spec again, or do you happen to be able to draw one just as quickly as you did with the encryption thing, or what would be the best to make it most efficient to get this at least spec discussable to text that has all the effects and requirements in?
Well, I couldn't be writing it, but I think it would be good to write a new one because there is probably usefulness in all the effort that was made into this one. In case in the future we want to explore it again, we would have this review.
You made a new, yeah, certainly. I'm talking about a new spec. I'm not trying
Yes.
to get the additional field thingy into something. No, I was talking about a new spec. Just touching that use case backups. Just because you out of your head you have all the things that are touched by making this change so quickly. So I'm just asking whether that's most efficient for us to start with. And then you join in reviewing it, or do you want to do a first draft and we start?
I'll join the review because I don't really have everything in my head. There are a couple of things I would have to explore in the code to double check. So, yeah.
All right, so we get to it. All right, we shall.
Thank you.
And even if it's not Antelope, I mean, a good idea stays a good idea. So if it's not making it this time, then we're not mad. Saying.
Yeah, and hopefully this is a more size effort than the other one. Now that we have gone back and reconsider.
All right. Thanks again for all the time and thoughts that went into this. Thank you again.
Yeah, and sorry for wasting so much time into exploring the general approach first before retracting and saying, nope, let's go with the first approach. Sorry about that.
No, I wouldn't be here today asking if there still has a chance if I wasn't or wouldn't be convinced that it makes sense still, and would be happy to invest more time into it because I really believe it's a good idea. Now with the works that go into making Cinder backup more efficient, the whole thing would benefit.
Okay, so this was a useful discussion. I have added a action item for Christian to write a new spec dedicated to this backup field, and we can all review it.
Sorry, now that I'm in the meeting with Firefox and not not Chrome, I would like to ask a simple question of the encrypted chunk backups that was brought before when everything hung in my system. There is about the rotation of this encryption keys. I was wondering, are we talking about, so if we rotate the keys, wouldn't that be problematic for restoring the backups on a completely different new system? Because we would have different backups with different keys, and we don't store the keys anywhere. So how do we know what key is used on each backup?
I suppose you're asking me, right?
Yes,
because I added that comment. Well, I pointed, since you mentioned in the packet you drew up, you mentioned Fernet. They have a particular question about the efficiency of using Fernet because it does base 64. That's a completely different thing. One remark I made. So I was initially thinking about just applying plain AES with a static key to the data, have a share, whatever, secret. But to the question, since you mentioned Fernet, I pointed at Keystone because Keystone uses Fernet, but it allows multi-Fernet, so multiple keys to be present. There's a primary key, a stage key, and whatever, a former key, and it will just simply try all of them to allow rollover. It has to overlap, yes. There's no metadata, I believe, storing that. It will just try all of them to see if it can decrypt the data. But that way I was just saying, since you have Fernet and you kind of were looking into that mechanism, I thought, well, let's do it like Keystone does. They store multiple keys in a directory as files. That makes it easier to handle for config management or distribution in general. You can just sync them or whatever. Files are always good in Unix. And then allow for a rotation. So if I want to stop using one, you flip the key, and then new backups will be done with the new primary key, but the old keys are still available to restore until they have phased out and there's no more backup stored that need that restoring key. That was, But as I said, I have doubts that Fernet is meant to such big chunks, if that's really a bit approach.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Yep.
I dumped the link in the chat. I don't know if you can get the old chat. That was the comment. That's exactly the comment I put in deep links to the exact snippets of code where, yeah, the things happen I just said. Problem, unfortunately, is there is no metadata, right, stored at the backup storage usually. There's the chunk encoder that has some metadata, but it's only for that. You could use the metadata to indicate which key was used, right? So
I think that would be the best. Yes.
Yeah.
So we don't have to try.
Then use Fernet to encrypt the metadata, store the key in a Fernet encrypted key or whatever, and then use an individual key per backup. Then you're fine. I was afraid to suggest that to touch the metadata, but if you're happy to touch the metadata to change the format, great.
No, I was referring about storing not the key but the name of the key, so that we don't have to try them all. It's just a name.
Yeah.
Key number 1. We use key number 1 so that when we go to restore, we don't have to do the whole trial of all the keys.
Right, and then the thing is about actively encrypting, it will just be an AES. It will not be Fernet per chunk, will it? That was So the question is, is Fernet applied to the metadata? Then I'm suggesting that you could still do one key per backup, which is best practice, right? You just have a master key. You can roll the master key. Use Fernet to just do that. You have the Fernet keys, but you randomize the key per backup, encrypt that backup, but you store that key encrypted with the Fernet key as part of the metadata. Then you can do master key rollover, and you have individual keys per backup, and it's all there. You have the library, you have the metadata format that's extensible. You're fine. You're doing like crypto best practice, right? But I was afraid of suggesting that going as far as touching the metadata, right? But if you're fine with touching the metadata, that would be a great solution. Yes.
I'll have a look into that. Yeah, to see if it makes sense.
And I think
and I think the only reason I suggested Fernet from cryptography was because, as far as I know, that's the easiest to implement. I don't want to do any encryption myself. Let's say I wanted to use a library and tell the library that hopefully somebody that knows what they are doing implement it, instead of me trying to do something risky. Yep.
Yeah, totally. I'm more than happy to discuss more if you feel like it. Just drop me a message or write in that review. I'm just trying to make sense. I gladly give you the link to Restic. I don't know if you know about that backup solution, usually for desktops. And they do that. They have a master key that's derived from your password, and then they store an encryption key with that master key encrypted just on the storage. So it's per backup keys. As I said, it's just best practice. They even have a paper referred to for that structure. If you're happy to do that, awesome. That'd be a great solution.
Well, at least I'm happy to explore the possibility of doing it. So if you could drop that into the Etherpad notes, that could be great.
I shall, yeah.
Thanks.
I don't think we have any specific action item for this. Like you can go through the comments added by Christian and see if we can do the changes as mentioned.
What about the limitations about Fernet that you mentioned in that comment? Is that a problem? Or if you already was solved with the metadata stuff? Just to check the part B of the second point from Christian comment. This is that Fernet is ideal for encrypting data that is easily fit in memory. So Fernet generally is unsuitable for very large files at this time. That's not a problem for us?
Yes, it is a problem as well, if that is the case. Because for now, it would be problematic. It increases the amount of memory we would use. But right now, I think it would work. The performance would be the problem more than the memory, because it's not that much different from compression when doing the compression doesn't yield any reduction. So we already need twice as much of memory for each, twice the size of a chunk. We need that amount for doing backups right now, because sometimes we do compression and the compression yields no reduction, so you have the original size plus the compressed size at the same time in memory. It would not be different in compression in encryption as long as we don't also increase the size, which I think was also part of the comment, because it goes into base 64, apparently. I didn't know that.
And that's part of the spec. It's unchangeable. I linked to the issue that they closed.
Mm-hmm.
So it would work for the metadata to use Fernet and all of that. That's not big. If you use Fernet, because it's an established mechanism inside OpenStack, if I may just look at Keystone again, they use that. But it's not suitable for the actual backup data, that you have to make up your own AES key and then encrypt it as a stream. And then again, I'm pointing at the efforts that Pete is doing about the streaming I/O, which I quite like, to make things much more efficient than going through it takes blockwise or chunkwise, and then you actually need like streamable libraries. You can't use Fernet to do backup chunks. That's just not a good idea.
Thanks.
With that, I think we have discussed all the existing spec for this cycle, and we have, I think, discussed mostly all the concerns, and we are good to make changes on them, and they are also good for review. I think we can move to the driver status topic now. There were so I went through the list of. Can someone click the highlight button? I'm hoping someone did.
I don't see it today.
Oh. Yeah, then I think we can probably continue with the next topic. So, yeah, so for the driver status, I went through we had one Etherpad in the Z cycle for all the drivers that were proposed. We had a lot of them, like I think 8-9 drivers, and gladly we merged most of them in the last cycle. There were few of them which were not merged and have been brought up in the recent meetings. One of them is the HPE XP driver. So I see someone just added a comment like the third party CA is not responding, but
yeah, that was me, Rajat. I'm going to have to drop in a minute, but I wanted to comment on a couple of those. Yeah, the XP driver doesn't seem to be reporting anything other than itself. So, we can't merge it until it's reporting on Cinder and OS Brick as well. So that's my only comment about that one. And there's, they're saying it's failing the iSCSI CI on their own system because of a race condition that's been identified. So, I'll leave it to other people to decide whether that's, whether we would merge it based on that comment. But I don't think we should be merging this because it's the third-party CI isn't testing. But unfortunately, I've got to drop now for another meeting. That was my only comment I wanted to make. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Thank you, Simon, for the input and joining. Okay, I left. So yeah, that was very useful. We can probably ask the HPE folks to modify their CI behavior to report on other patches as well, apart from their own. And even OS Brick, like last we discussed, it seems kind of important to report on the OS Brick side because we have the connectors there, and they should work with the connectors we have. Or if they don't, then we can modify them. But yeah, and regarding the CI failure condition, I think they asked to take a look. I will probably take a look. We still have time for the deadline of drivers. I think it's 20th January. I extended it from milestone 2 because milestone 2 was falling somewhere around the holiday season. I think it's 6th January. So, but yeah, still just for a checkpoint to see what's the status of drivers. So, okay, for the HPE one, we have few points that we can mention to them. For the fungible driver, they have a reporting CI. Again, I can check if they report on other patches as well or just their own. But their CI seem to be passing, which is good. Yeah, and these two drivers were left over from last cycle. They didn't have a working CI last time, so we had to postpone it to the next cycle. Now at least they have CI reporting. We can fix the issues. Yeah, I mean they can fix the issues which they are facing, but that is at least some good progress on their side. The last driver we had was for Flex NVMe TCP. So they had a blueprint reported for it, but I still don't see any patch proposed for it. Not sure if anyone from Delhi MC is around, but I don't think they have any plan for adding this driver in this cycle. Because like writing a driver and then making the CI working, it will take a lot of time. Yeah, we just have, yeah, and I didn't see any other driver being proposed on the like Cinder Garrett. So I think these two are the focus for this cycle. Yeah, that's all I want to discuss for this driver status. And again, as we have said before, like we would like drivers to post CI comments on the OSBrick patches as well. So if you have an existing driver and it is just reporting on the Cinder side, would be good to add that section as well to report on the OSBrick part. Okay, moving on. We have this topic Cinder use of C group v1, which I think is a limitation since yoga. And John Bernard took up that task. So is John around?
Yeah, I talked to him like last week or something. He wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it, so he'll report at one of the weekly meetings.
Yeah, that's good. Do we have any knowledge about like any progress on it so far, or I think maybe John can help better.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, he'll just tell us at next week's meeting, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
But just to out of curiosity, was the point about reporting about some progress in moving from C groups V1 to C groups V2, or asking for feedback, or so is it moving forward somehow?
I'm not quite sure. I think he would. My memory is that we were going to ask operators if they had a. Yeah, I just don't remember. It had something to do with container deployments, that it would be better to apply the throttling differently instead of using the RC group stuff. So he was just, because we don't have a good sense of whether people actually use this functionality or not. But I don't remember if he actually sent something out to the operators or what happened with that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can discuss this when John is around, so he can give the most accurate answers. Okay, and the next topic is for the OSC cinder client parity. So I think I just added it for just yeah, I'm not sure. Like I just wanted to let everyone know like this is in progress, and I have a Excel document created, spreadsheet document where we have this sender client and OSC commands. I think we still lack support for 7 or 8 of them. I have a section there which says supported in OSC, which should be saying no. So we can just filter that out to see which one says no. So I think it was around 6-7 commands that were not supported, and even with the current commands we had some conflict. So I have just a comment section in there which says like what is the difference I saw in both the commands. Yeah, and regarding the volume create one, I did some modifications in OSC. So we had this backup parameter, like creating a volume from backup option in sender client, which we didn't have in OSC. So I just added that parameter. And I think there was another thing conflicting with the creating a volume from source. So the size field was not correctly determined in that case. Like, do we take the passed in size or the source size, or which one is bigger, like that? So we pass the accurate size now to sender. I think we have that handling on the API level as well, but probably best for OSC to just send the right details for us to do it. And yeah, it was missing a test. I added that. So another patch I proposed was to change the name and size thing, which I mean, we have a thread of comments on the patch, which is currently abandoned, and we have a mail thread also running on the basis of that. So in general, they want consistency in OSC rather than consistency in the legacy project specific client to OSC. So they would like to have the convention same for all the like all the different services. Like even for Nova, they have the name as positional. For Glance, for Keystone, everything, they have the name as a positional argument. So they would prefer for Sender also to have it positional, even though it doesn't make much sense for Sender because name, even without a name like volume is good to go. But yeah, they don't align with that idea. And I think there was discussion regarding the like scripts breaking, which were using this command syntax, and now suddenly it changes. So yeah, a lot of discussion around it on the patch, but mostly it was abandoned. So yeah, for the next changes I propose, I will try to stick to that so we can easily do the migration and yeah. That's all I wanted to update regarding this. Okay, doesn't seem to be any comments or anything on this. So we can move to the next one. It is by Christian, so I think this is what we already discussed on the like spec while taking a look at the specs. So he will propose a separate spec for this, for the backup state, and yeah, this also seems covered. So yeah, we can directly move to the topic, remove xenserver image support, which is by Brian.
Yeah, so I was poking around in the image utils and came across this stuff. So xenserver used VHD disks, but they were in an OVF container, so they're basically gzipped together. And I believe they had a weird naming convention. Well, not weird. I mean, it was like 1, 2, 3. They used the names instead of the UUIDs in the backing files, I think. But in any case, what happened was Nova would create those when it was using xenserver as the hypervisor, and it would package them up. So support was added to Cinder like way back when. If you look at the, I'm sorry, I'm like pointing to the Etherpad where the links are. But the Cinder Xen API driver was removed, I think like 10 years ago. And then Nova has completely removed xenserver support in Victoria. And I've got a link to their deprecation announcement. So because it was, the way they did it was they put out like a preliminary deprecation and said, hey, we're going to remove this unless we hear from operators. And then they put out another one that said, we haven't heard anything, so we're going to go ahead and do it. And then they did. So Nova hasn't supported xenserver since Victoria. So my question is, I don't think we might as well get rid of this xenserver code if it's not being used by anything. Now, VHDs are also used by Windows, but they completely handle their stuff separately. So they use VHD utils, and they use the OSWin library to handle that stuff. So they are not using this kind of stuff. This is very particular to the xenserver hypervisor. So my question is, because I'm kind of lazy, we could deprecate this and say we're going to remove it. But on the other hand, if it hasn't been possible for these things to be created anymore if you're not using xenserver, and you can't use xenserver since Victoria with Nova. So I'm wondering whether we could just count the Nova deprecation announcement as ours also, and just say, since Nova hasn't supported this since Victoria, we're just going to make this disappear, or whether we do need to deprecate it. So that was my question.
Oh, I'm not very much aware about this, so just want to ask a question. Like, in which operation does this xenserver help us? Is it some sort of optimization or some different operation we can perform with this?
Well, what happens is we have a special check when you do. I think it's when you're fetching volumes from glance to create, to write to a volume. So you're going to create a volume from an image. And so what happens is you grab one of these images from glance, but it's really a gzip package. So we take it apart, and then we order them, and then we coalesce them so that you have one file to work with. And then that's what's actually written as the temporary file that we continue our operations on in Cinder to write the volume. So that's the only place that it's used.
Is it specific to Cinder, or I think it should be that code is generic to all drivers, so
Well, yeah, it was in the image utils, but I think the only thing that would trigger it would be there was just a check to see if this is a xenserver image, and if so, it would coalesce it so that we just had one file instead of multiple files in a package. So I guess in one sense it's not hurting anything, although we'll talk about it later at the end of the day. Anyway, I don't know if anyone has any strong opinions. And maybe I should just throw it out there and we can think about it and talk about it at the next Glance meeting. Cinder meeting.
So on the Cinder side, I see there is a patch mentioned that remove the driver, and we still have, I think, code at different places that does this check. So does this, I mean, does the functionality even exist in Cinder? Because that patch removed it. And
Oh, no, well, so we still have some stuff in image utils, and we are actually calling it every time we do a fetch. I think it's fetch to format, maybe. I can check again and just verify that nobody else is using it. But as far as I can tell, the Windows drivers completely use their own VHD handling stuff. They don't use the image utils to handle the VHDs. So it was really a very specific thing for xenserver. We can come back to this. I mean, I can ask at the next Cinder meeting what people think. It's just if we deprecate it, we can't remove it until 2 cycles because of the I believe that's the case because of the skip level upgrades. So that's why I'd sort of like to just yank it now. But if that's going to cause problems, then we shouldn't do it. Okay, that's basically it then.
yeah, sure. And I think we do the same way, like Nova did. Like we ask operators to see if anyone is using it. If no one is doing it, then yeah, maybe there is no harm in removing directly.
Yeah, I guess I could just send something out to the operators list directly and just say, this is hanging around, we want to get rid of it, any objections, and see if anybody says anything. Yeah, because Jeremy Stanley's pretty good about noticing those and saying, well, you need to go through a deprecation period. So I'll put something out to the operators, say that, okay, I'll run it, I'll slap a draft together of what I want to say, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting, and then we'll do it. Thanks.
That sounds good. I'll probably add the draft part into action. So okay. Yeah, looks like we're good on this one as well. The next topic, cinderlib recursion error, is added by, I think it is Alexander. If you're around. Hi, Alexander.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention and time. I would like to discuss and ask your help on 2 topics: cinderlib test suite and pull requests for the Infinidate Cinder driver. For cinderlib, we have issue with a recursion error on Red Hat OpenStack platform certification tasks in case of enabled SSL transport for the Infinidate storage API. Cinderlib failed with recursion error, and as a workaround, we can disable SSL or SSL transport or use Python request library from the upstream repository. So I'm not sure if this issue related to cinderlib directly or maybe related to Red Hat OpenStack request package, because this package contains some custom patches. Please take a look at the Red Hat Bugzilla issue and my comments. And I would like to ask you help to review pull requests for the Infinidate driver. We have already been reviewed for a few patches. Thank you very much for the review and comments, and 5 more changes are waiting for review. Please let me copy paste list to the chat window. Thank you. All of these changes are very important for us because we can pass our Red Hat OpenStack platform certification test suite with the current driver from the upstream due to known issues and some missing features. So please let me know if you can improve these patches and change it. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Alexander, I'm looking at the Baxilla, and I see there is a reference to some issues in Evenlet, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I don't know if that is the reference to the Evenlet patch that merged. I don't know if that is the one that broke it, or if that is an Evenlet patch that fixes the issue. There is pool 531, it's merged.
Interesting. Yes, because this issue cannot be reproduced on the vanilla DevStack environment when I use all packages from upstream repository, and the issue can be reproduced only on Red Hat OpenStack platform and only with Red Hat packages, especially for Python request package. Thank you very much. And I put some simple patch when I use code from the upstream repository from Python request library. So with the original code, this issue cannot be reproduced on the Red Hat OpenStack platform.
So the additional code is the try except clause, right?
Yes, but I think this may become some side effect from this code, because this code may use some additional calls for Infinidate library and works as a workaround for the issue. Thank you very much.
Do you know what request version was being used? Or, well, no, I can say it. It's whatever it's in 16.2.
Yes.
Okay.
I post all details. Thank you.
By the way, Alexander, I don't know if you are aware that you can actually pass the certification even if cinderlib is failing. You can just say, I opt out of cinderlib test, and I don't want to say that I support cinderlib. And as long as the rest of the certification passes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. And as a workaround, we can disable SSL transport for the Infinidate API as another workaround. Because with disabled SSL, it works fine without any issues. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexander, for bringing this up. For the certification part, I think it's a downstream issue, but we can surely look if it could be fixed in the code, even with Eventlet or cinderlib. Yeah, and regarding the reviews, like you can see, like I'm already late on the deadlines, like not exactly late, but I still have to review some specs and drivers, and I'm still not able to find time to do it. But surely I will, because I have, I think, taken a look at your patches before in the last cycle, and I will surely keep a reminder to take a look at them as well this cycle and try to get them merged also.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That is for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for bringing these topics up. I think with that we are out of topics, and if anyone would like to discuss anything, like they didn't add a topic for it and would like to discuss it now. Okay, looks like we don't have. Okay,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I have one quick question about encrypted volumes. Please tell me if you support a boot from encrypted volumes on the generic NFS backend, because I don't see any documentation about bootable volumes in for encrypted case.
And generic NFS encryption is not fully supported yet. So no, I think not yet. But maybe Eric can let's confirm or not.
Sorry, what was the question?
Boot from an encrypted NFS volume. Does it work in OpenStack?
Well, NFS encryption. Sorry.
Well, I think we're still fixing a couple bugs around NFS encryption in general, but as far as I know, boot would work.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think that's about it. I will just stop the recording.